Today we're going to talk about blood type genetics. So you've done Punnett square problems with basic monohybrid crosses. Remember, mono means one. So we're crossing organisms with one trait each, okay? Today we're going to do that, but we're going to do it with blood type. And blood type is a little different. We're still only going to use one trait, meaning blood type. But it's going to be slightly different than some of the other problems you've seen. So here's our learning target. I can predict the offspring phenotypes and genotypes for blood type crosses. And you see there, we're going to be learning about some other crosses as well. But today, for now, we're only going to focus on blood type. I want you to take a look at this picture. These are all of the known blood types for humans, okay? So we've got a B positive, A negative, B negative, O positive. We've got all these different blood types. I want you just to look at the ones that have A's in them. So these four right here. And I need you to tell me, what do these four have in common? If you notice, all of them have this A antigen triangle sticking on the outside. You might be like, what the heck's an antigen? Well, an antigen is a protein. Remember we said proteins are really important? Proteins are super important, and some of them are on the surface of cells, and they act as receptors or they work in signaling. But A antigen, this is the protein that makes it blood type A. So if you have this A protein, then you have blood type A. Now you might have other stuff like B's or pluses or minuses, but as long as you have this A protein, you have a blood type. Do me a favor and look at the B's, okay? So here's two that have B, and here's two that have B. What do they have in common? They all have the B antigen. So what the heck's a B antigen? It's a protein. It's a protein that makes the B blood type B. And last but not least, go ahead and look at the pluses. All of them that have pluses on the top here, what do they have in common? They all have the RH antigen on them, okay? This is a typo. This is not supposed to be looked at here, but all of them that are across the top here have the RH factor, RH antigen. This is just another protein that's on the surface of these blood cells. Okay, you'll notice O, there's no O protein. O means it's missing a protein, okay? It doesn't have an A and it doesn't have a B. So what do we need to write down from this, okay? Here's what we need to write down. An antigen, or sometimes we call them immunoglobulin, okay? This is a protein on the surface of a cell. So go ahead and write this down. You don't need to know about the A antigen, the B antigen, those types of things. This is what I need you to write down. When you hear the word antigen, I want you to think protein. Okay, that's a protein on the surface of a cell. Here you can see some proteins on the surface here, and we've talked about how coronaviruses, in particular SARS-CoV-2, that's the coronavirus right now, has these proteins, these spike proteins, okay? Well, blood cells have proteins. Almost all cells have proteins on the surface of their cell membrane. Write this down, okay? So in blood type with our genes, okay? So remember, gene, a section of DNA that codes for protein. Genes A and B are co-dominant. Think about the word co, or the prefix co. If I'm co-parenting, what am I doing? I'm parenting together with another parent, okay? A lot of times you'll hear divorced parents talk about co-parenting, meaning they're parenting together. So when we say co-dominant, we mean they're dominant together. They're both dominant. So in this case, we don't have one dominant and one recessive. A and B are both dominant genes. O is recessive, okay? which kind of makes sense because if you think about it, A and B both had those proteins on the outside of their cell. O didn't have any protein, so O is recessive. All right, we're gonna write this chart down, okay? So we write blood types differently. We don't just write one letter, okay? We've got a couple letters. We use I for the gene, and the I stands for immunoglobulin, okay? So this big capital I that you see down here stands for immunoglobulin. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a second, I want you to pause this video, and I want you to copy down this chart right here. You can keep listening if you want while you copy it down. For our blood type A, here's what we can have. We can have the genotype IA, meaning we've got this immunoglobulin protein with the I gene with A. Remember that A protein? Okay, so we've got two A's, or we can have an A and a lowercase I. The lowercase I is for the O, okay? So this could be our blood type. We could have either one, kind of like we could have big A, or big A, little a, and it would still give us blood type A. For B, same thing, big B, or big B and little I. So the little I stands for the O, the recessive blood type. Okay, if I have AB blood type, I'm going to have an A and a B. And if I have two lowercase i's, I'm going to have O blood type. So let's do a problem, okay? It says mom is hybrid type B blood, dad is hybrid type A blood. Remember we said hybrid? Hybrid means two different, okay? It doesn't mean two the same, it means two different. For all these blood type problems, we're gonna have the same here. Dominant is gonna be A and B, recessive is gonna be O, all right? So what letter is gonna represent A? It's gonna be A, right? So the A gene is gonna be IA, B gene, IB, O gene is gonna be lowercase I. And this will be all the same for all of them, okay? Now we have to figure out what mom and dad are. So I'm gonna go back to this chart. Mom is hybrid type B. So type B, if she's hybrid, that means two different letters. So she's gonna be this one. And if dad is hybrid type A, we need two different letters, so that's gonna be this one. So look, mom is IB, lowercase I. Dad is IA, lowercase I. And again, reminder, we just use this I because that's the gene that it stands for, immunoglobulin, which is that protein. Then we write our sperm and our eggs. So for mom, the IB is gonna go into one, the lowercase I in the other, dad, IA, and lowercase I. We do our Punnett square, right? IB and I, IA and I, and then we fill them in, okay? So if we take a look at this, let's figure out what blood types we have. If I have IA, IB, what blood type is this gonna be if I have an A and a B? It's gonna be AB. What about this one? If I have a B and a little I, remember the little I is recessive, so we can just ignore that. What blood type is this gonna be? This is gonna be B. What about this one where it's IAI? This is gonna be A. What about this one that's all recessive? This is gonna be O. So here are our blood types. So A is 1 out of 4, B is 1 out of 4, AB is 1 out of 4, and O is 1 out of 4. We'll do one more practice problem, okay? It says mom is heterozygous type B, dad is AB. So again, all these blood type problems are gonna look the same in the beginning. Dominant is A and B, O is recessive. What do our genes stand for? The A gene is IA, B gene is IB, O gene is little I. So mom is heterozygous. Remember that means two different. Okay, so she's type B, so she's gotta have two different genes. And dad is AB, so he's going to have an A and a B. So mom, notice heterozygous, two different. Dad is going to be IA, IB. And then we do our sperm and our egg, so the IB to one, the I to the other, the IA, and the IB. And then we make our Punnett square, okay? So here's our Punnett square. We've got IA, IB. So what blood type's this going to be? This is going to be AB, right? What about this one? That's two B's? Blood type B. What about this one? 1B. That's going to be B. And what about this one? This is going to be A. So here are our blood types. Now, the one last thing I want to say, when you are working on these problems, don't get caught up in this little subscript, okay? So when we talk about these problems with these little subscripts, if you don't want to write this as a superscript, you can just write it as IA, capital, capital, okay? Don't worry about making this tiny if that's going to be frustrating for you. All right, last thing we need to write down in our notes, RH factor. Remember we said all of them that have RH have the positive? RH is another protein, okay? So write this down. RH positive means the person has the RH protein. They have an extra protein on their blood cells. RH minus means they don't have that protein. They lack it. They're missing it, right? So if we look at the difference between O negative and O positive has the RH protein, the plus protein. OH minus doesn't have it. So RH positive is dominant. RH negative is recessive. So let's do a sample problem here, okay? This is going to be more simple than the blood type problems because we just have a regular dominant and recessive, okay? So dad is heterozygous for Rh positive, mom is homozygous for Rh negative. So a dominant is going to be the positive, recessive is going to be negative. What letters are we going to use for each? Okay, the Rh positive gene we can just write as a plus sign, and the negative gene we can write as a minus sign. So what's dad going to be? He's heterozygous, meaning one of each, right? So he's going to have a plus and a minus. Mom is homozygous, meaning she's got two of the same, so she'll have two minuses. Okay, so plus minus, minus minus. Each of them goes into the sperm and the egg, okay? And then we do our Punnett square. We can just use pluses and minuses here, okay? So if it's got a plus and a minus, is it going to be plus or is it going to be minus? Which one's dominant? It's going to be plus, right? Rh positive. And if it's minus, it's going to be Rh negative. So here we have two that are going to be positive and two that are going to be negative.